I'm Brian FitzGerald, the producer and director of this documentary that I call A Beginner's Guide to American Amateur High-Powered Rocketry. What I've done here is gathered together a lot of people who are knowledgeable in this sport, and my idea here was that if you got to see them and hear them and see what they're doing, that it would give you some idea whether you want to get involved in the sport yourself. As you watch these interviews, you're going to see a lot of different personality types with a wide variety of colorful backgrounds, people who come from all over the country. One of the reasons I decided to do this is before I got involved in it as a documentary, I did some research and I found things that I really enjoy about the American spirit. There's individualism here, there is innovation, invention, people working up their own ideas, and there's also association, people forming free association, working together toward a common goal so that we don't need a lot of taxpayer dollars spent or government interference, if you will. And I just see this as a great piece of Americana. You know, another thing I think you might notice when you're watching this is what I got is that space travel isn't just for the government anymore. Individuals are getting involved in, corporations, groups, and we're going to see that more in the future. So thank you again for buying this series, this documentary, and I'd like to open up here with a little music video I call Countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
But no, I guess we just call ourselves Rocketeers, you know. We're just amateur Rocketeers.
I traveled out to Argonia, Kansas, where they had the annual Air Fest, a gathering of rocket enthusiasts from all around the country.
Well, the way this started is, I guess 3 years ago, I have at that time a 9-year-old son, 10-year-old son, and he got involved in, excuse me. You always want to watch the launches just in case they come towards you. At any rate, we got involved in Estes Rocketry, the little small low-power rocketry. And we found an advertisement, a flyer out at Science Education of a high-power launch. And we drove out here not expecting anything, and there was a rocket of this size and bigger, and we were hooked. And what started off with level 1 rockets, proceeded into level 2 rockets, and now we've gone kind of in a big circle, and we're up at a level 3 certification. The national organization is an organization called AAA. It's and they have certifications in place to talk about what size motors you can fly legally. As a person off the street, you can fly up to a G motor. Certify one time, you build an H motor rocket or an I motor rocket, and that's a level 1 certification. And the only requirement for that is you build the rocket and then you fly it successfully inside of one of the prefix around here. Level 2 certification is a little more difficult. It's a little more thrust. You have to take a written test on safety regulations and theory of flight, and then you fly a bigger motor, a J, K, or an L motor, and successfully recover. The last step in AAA certification is level 3, and that's what I'll be attempting today or tomorrow. M, N, or O motors. Doesn't take a written, but now I have to submit my plans to the rocket to AAA advisory panel. It's a very select group of experts. They review my plans, they review the construction of the rocket. They're here to make sure that it's safely built, assembled, and ready to fly. They actually give me the approval to fly it. I fly it and successfully recover, and then I'm level 3 certified. You know, level 1 rocket you could do easily for under $100. A level 2 rocket, not a whole lot more than that. The problem with level 3 becomes some of the requirements. One of the requirements is it has to be electronically deployed parachute. Some of these other rockets will use a motor burn through and a puff of black powder to deploy the parachute. We have to put ours out with electronics. In this rocket, I'll have 2 altimeters that sense apogee. The motor reload is $360, and so in 4.5 seconds I'm out $360. Successful or not, I might add. The motor case is another $330. The good news is I'm borrowing this one from a prefix, so I didn't have to acquire that. I guess the answer to your question is about, I don't know, $650, $700. And if it all comes back, I get all of it back, but $350, and if it's not, it goes up proportionally from there. They're engineers, they're pilots, they're sales guys, they're line workers. Probably they had some experience with SS rockets in their childhood, and the thrill of the high power rocketry is that if it was fun with an SS, it's a lot of fun with these rockets because there's so much more thrust and they're difficult. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do, is to build a rocket like this. This rocket's a piece of cardboard tube that's wrapped 3 times with fiberglass, and the fins are plywood fins that are fiberglass, and then use epoxy fillets to build it in place. And it has to be relatively accurate because any kind of difference in the nozzle causes it to fly unusual. It has to be strong. This rocket will hit, the motor will hit 450 pounds of thrust for 4.5 seconds. It sustains, I think, 13G launch, 13 times the, 13 Gs. The astronauts only get 7. I mean, and this is a heavy, big, heavy rocket. Some of these other guys, their rockets hit, 50, 60 Gs. 65 pounds. Getting it to go up is easy, but the challenge is, again, to recover it. The up part's easy, the down part's a little difficult. I learned by watching. There's a lot of guys out here that are very talented rocket builders, and when I first got started, I walked around and looked at everybody's project, and the real nice thing about a club like Cloudbusters here is that you can ask anybody anything and they're going to help you with your project. There's really no formal training involved in it. I don't have any kind of engineering or construction background. I'm a salesman. These guys can really can steer you right. And that's the advantage of doing this in a club environment rather than trying to do this individually out in the field somewhere. The parameters on this rocket, when it's done, you're only looking at half of it. There's another 9.5 feet that goes on top of it. At 10 feet above the rocket pad, it'll be doing 42 miles an hour. At motor burnout, 4.5 seconds later, it's going 435 miles an hour, Mach 7.8, 78% of the speed of sound. The motor burns out, it slows down pretty quickly after that. From that 4.5 seconds, it's going to coast up about 11 seconds or 12 seconds. And it should reach apogee or top of its flight at about 5,300 feet above the ground level, which is not high by some scales, but it's high by a 19-foot long rocket that's 7.5 inches in diameter. So, and with anything, with any luck, it'll touch down going about 15 feet per second under a 10-foot parachute each half. So that's the biggest parameter. I get all my stuff back then. Tripoli has many altitude records. Most of them are done by minimum diameter rockets with the maximum sort of motor you can put in it. And they do it by engine class, be it an A, B, C, D, or an M motor. The M motor altitude class in the motor category that I'm going to be flying this rocket on is, I'm going to guess, it's 28 or 30,000 feet. But that'd be a rocket that's 4 inches in diameter, the same diameter as the motor, basically. Tripoli also has what they call large rockets, and a large rocket in the M motor class is 7.5 inches in diameter, 8 feet long. Well, I've got the 7.5 inches and the 8 feet in the bottom half of the rocket. It's currently not clean, so if my flight is successful, I'll own the high altitude, or the large rocket high altitude record. We're going to use 9.5 grams of black powder, and it should pressurize this upper tube to about 20 psi, so pounds per square inch. With any luck, it'll blow these two parts apart 30 feet at altitude. I have a 5-foot shot cord, so I should get parachutes. That's the whole intent. That's what's next. Wait for the wind to die down and prep the rocket. And I'm going to go around and ask some of these guys what they think about me building the ejection charges now, and then waiting, because I don't want to take them back into town. I'm going into town tonight. I'll have to find someone that's staying out or someplace to put it, keep it out here, because I don't want to carry that in my truck. Is that too much space, Dennis? You see the top? Or is it leaning against the left one?
We got eight more foot to put on this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, eight more feet.
8 more foot, so it'll be 16 foot total.
Yeah, plus a 2-foot nose cone. Well, this is my level 3 project, which is the highest certification in Tripoli. It's the large motor class. And we're getting this tower here ready to accept this bottom half of my rocket and then the upper half. When the wind calms down, we'll assemble it, load the ejection charges, pack the parachutes, and hopefully launch it. Well, launch it, that's no problem. Hopefully recover it. Well, I'm kind of new to the sport. I guess I've been here about 2.5 years. But the bug's bitten pretty hard, which kind of happens. And when you start with a smaller rocket, it's kind of like cars. You want bigger, better, and faster. And this is what happens when you get bigger, better, and faster in rocketry. On the motor of the class that Kevin and I are going to be flying here this afternoon or tomorrow, you wouldn't want to be very close to this because the noise when these launch at 500 feet is quite a shock. That out at this kind of close range, it'd probably be deafening. And for safety reasons, obviously we have no one out here. This is going to be hard to put in your video.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, we saved it at least. Still looks like it's kind of...
Come on, open,
Well, it
open.
ain't gonna bury anyway. Looks like the payload's not quite fluffed either. Still an awesome flight though.
Well, I've got a couple here. This one here is named Wind Nuke. It's made out of PVC. It's a 3-inch diameter rocket. It's two-stage deployment. That means it shoots out 2 parachutes, so a small one at apogee and then a main chute 500 feet above ground. There's electronics board in here that senses barometric pressure and determines altitude, similar to what aircraft do. A black powder charge on each end of this coupler will separate the rocket, and then 500 feet from the ground it'll blow off the nose cone and put out the main chute. The idea there is to get it back to Earth quick so you don't have to walk several miles to find it. You know, there's probably several $100s in each one of these rockets. The smaller rockets can be built for well under $100. Size has a lot to do with how much it costs. Well, if somebody was going to get involved in rocketry, I'd advise them to, say, go to the AAAAHPR or NA, National Association of Rocketry websites, find out what local clubs are in their area, and try to attend a local launch, and just ask people what it's about and make your own decision about whether you'd like to get into it. Well, it ensures that you're building and flying rockets in a safe manner. It gives you access to people who've got experience in what's going on, and that way you'll get on the right track, make less mistakes, and hopefully have more fun and cost you less in the long run.
Just recently flew this rocket. This rocket started out as a PML kit. I did modify it a little bit. You can see the altimeter in here. The altimeter is inside the see-through compartment. This flew on an H242 motor from Aerotech. It's a reload motor, still in the end of the rocket, being retained by the motor retainers. This rocket went to 2,193 feet. You can hear the altimeter beeping out the altitude. At apogee, the altimeter lit a black powder charge that separated the rocket, bringing out the parachute. And I had motor ejection as a backup. This was a maiden flight, and it performed very well. This is a level 1 certification rocket. I did not certify on this rocket, but you need to be certified level 1 to fly this rocket. I've been in rocketry about 6 years now. I'm very active with the Boy Scouts. This year in Wellington, I'll be building about 300 rockets with the Boy Scouts. Real active in rocketry the last 3 or 4 years, but I've been into it. I'm a born-again Rocketeer. I was a Rocketeer as a young child, and then left the sport for a while when I grew up and saw they were launching larger rockets. Knew I had to get right back into it and launch the large ones. We have approximately 108 active Cloudbuster members based out of here in Wichita, Kansas. Actually, Cloudbuster members go from Amarillo. We have members in Amarillo, up in Ohio and Indiana. We have members in Tennessee. We actually have members within Cloudbusters all over the United States. We hold 3 large regional launches every year. This is the first of the year, being Cloudburst. In the fall, we have, or late summer I should say, we have Airfest. And then in the fall, we have what we call Distant Thunder. And those are our 3 major launches. And we don't launch at harvest time through May and June, but after harvest, we'll start our fun flies up again in July and go through all the way to the end of the year.
This is a nose cone for the Viking project. Some of the Cloudbusters got together and discussed the possibility of making a large rocket as a group, and we came up with the Viking rocket, Viking sounding rocket. We decided to build a full-scale Viking. This is the nose cone as it is being turned. This was turned in 3 different sections, from here to the top, from here down to here, and we still have the bottom section to turn. Top 2 pieces are glued together. We do have the bottom section here that has not been glued to the top section yet. We've got a solid bulkhead, but the majority of this is hollow. I can show you that the bottom half section of this is hollow, and it will be glued to the top section here, and then we will epoxy fiberglass over the entire surface, making it a large nose cone. We have 102 inches of foam here, and on this is the upper section. We'll have a 4-foot body tube along with the 102 inches of foam, giving us the forward section of the Viking project. This is one of the body tubes that we'll be using. This is a 12-foot section of sono tube from Concrete Accessories, and what we've done is we're taking the paper off of it. It's approximately a 1/2 inch thick. We're going to take approximately half of the paper off of it, and then fiberglass on the outside, giving it a waterproof barrier on the outside. There'll be approximately 4 tubes in this, 3.5, and then the nose cone on top of that. We'll have couplers joining the sections together. The fins of this rocket will be approximately 7 foot tall, 33 inches from the outside edge of the rocket. One of our Viking project members is going to be helping us with the motors. We will have 2 P motors. Chuck mentioned about the 3/4 scale Nike flying on a P motor earlier. We will have 2 of those P motors in this to give it the power we need to get it up. It's just going to be a single stage rocket. Approximately 4,000 to 5,000 feet in altitude is what we're expecting. We're looking at a weight, whenever we roughly figure our weight at this point, we're looking at a weight between 700 and 800 pounds is what we're going to have on this rocket whenever we're completed. We're looking at the possibility of using a cherry picker crane for this to go ahead and assemble it on the launch tower that we will be making. So it's going to be a very big project.
There's no end to this whole field. You can start off on an Estes rocket and you can finish with an Estes rocket. You can start with the Estes and work your way up to a rocket that might be going 300,000 feet. Larger the rocket doesn't mean a higher budget. This means more creativity, especially in this case. Well, this is a rocket called Star Chaser. It more or less has several different sizes. The booster itself is 12 inches in diameter, carries up into the payload section, and then you have a transition down to a 5.5-inch tube, and then it goes back up into another transition, and it comes out in its final diameter of 7.5. The nose cone fits onto the top of the actual payload section itself, and you can pretty much put anything you wanted in this rocket. This nose cone at one time actually had cameras in it. The inside of the booster section, it's made from a 7.5-inch diameter body tube. This particular case, going from 12 inches and necking down and then coming back up, I wanted to have a little bit more structure than just trying to figure out how to join a 12-inch tube. So there's some centering rings that are inside throughout the entire body. The top section just slides into here with the normal coupler. There's a centering about every 6 inches throughout the entire rocket until you get to the fins, where there's one on this particular rocket every 4 inches. The actual diameter is brought up by a sono tube, which is typically used for concrete forming, for making piers and pilings. Around that was a few layers of fiberglass, but then I wanted to not have to sand a lot. When you get into having to sand a tube 12 inches in diameter, it'll take a while. So this actually has an aluminum skin that's been attached to it. The fiberglass takes contact cement very well. It was just contact cemented, and then the aluminum skin was wrapped around it. It's held its form fairly well. It dents easily, but then when you look at the structure behind it, there's fiberglass, there's bulkheads, there's a cardboard tube, and then you have a phenolic tube on the inside. The whole thing's held together by overlap after overlap of different types of materials. Something for this size, with the fins are usually a problem trying to keep weight down. And on this particular fin, there was a 1-inch blue board, which is used typically for insulation on the sides of homes. On the blue board, there was layers of fiberglass overlaid in different angles and then pressed together. All the excess resin, and try to get out all the air bubbles as much as possible, are squeezed out of it. It's more or less pressure laminated. And what you come up with is just a hollow core fin that weighs about 1.5 pounds when you compare it to a wood or a true fiberglass fin that might weigh 10 pounds or plus. They're mainly just flat. A lot of your aerodynamic shapes are left off of this particular fin. It wasn't made for high performance. It was made for more show than it was speed. It goes up really gracefully. It's a slow-moving rocket. You see it from start to finish. The motors that are in there create a lot of noise. People get excited, and it's a fun flight. You see it leave the ground, and you see everything happen right in front of you. The weight of the entire rocket, fully loaded, ready to go, is over 120 pounds. So something small really won't cut it. An M1939, which is a full M motor, really barely gets it off the ground to what it should be like. Most of the rockets take off really fast. This one, you could walk up to it and stop it before it left the rail. On this particular flight, though, we're going to use a couple extra motors included with the M, and these are Case 700 cases. Just a little bit of extra power. We wanted to go a little bit higher, a little bit harder. It's still going to be a slow-moving rocket, but it's going to be twice as loud, twice the amount of flame, twice the amount of smoke. Total power of all three of the motors are actually into an N-class motor. So what you wind up with the 2 Ks and an M is an N when you figure out the total newtons. total newtons around 15,040 newton seconds. So it's about a mid-end. If my wife's watching, I think I got $56 in it. That includes the paint for the nose cone. Otherwise, the whole rocket probably ran about $600 just to build it. A lot of time. The transitions are made from foam, fiberglass, and a little bit of Bondo. Painted it with an automotive paint just to have a nice durable finish on it. Being that the skin of the rocket is actually aluminum, it painted out fairly nice at first. And the motors, again, if the wife is watching, $56. But an M1939 will run you about $4.99 retail, and then the K700s are around $115 each. So we've got a little over $700 just in fuel for 7.5 seconds of maybe 7.5 seconds. It's still a fun hobby. Something like this, most people won't fly on a weekly or monthly basis. It's a once-a-year flight. And the last time this one flew was 2 years ago. So it's time to come out of the closet with it and just show it off again. Just judging off of what I know it does on the M and what 2Ks should do, we're probably looking at around 4,700 to 5,000 feet. And it's going to be slow, but it'll get there. The main chute for this sits up into the top section, and it's a 19-foot experimental chute from Rocket Man. It doesn't really have a drogue chute, but going to that altitude, I don't want it to just free fall, so I'm going to put on a 9-foot chute for when it breaks apart at apogee. It can come down a little bit softer than what it normally would. Usually I'll just let it fall. It only has to drop 1,000 feet and the main chute will come out. This time it'll fall close to 3,000 feet, and then the main chute will come out. And I just don't want it to go too fast. Coming down too fast is really bad. Definitely start off small. You can really become saddened, or maybe a good word for disappointed. You can become disappointed fairly easy if something goes wrong, if you spent a lot of money on a larger rocket and it just didn't work the way you wanted it to. Starting off small doesn't mean that you're not playing with the big boys, because there's a lot of small rockets out there that have more power in them than you'd think was available for that size of a rocket. A 3 or 4 inch size rocket is respectable. An M is 4 inches in diameter. An M in a 4-inch rocket really moves. You've really got to hold it together for it to take a good flight. But if you have that rocket, you can build on a 3-inch motor base or a 54-inch motor base. You can learn all what you need to know to go to the next level. You don't need to start big, you don't really need to start real small, but you want to go something comfortable to what you can really afford and what you can build. And if you have very little building experience, of course you'd want to start smaller motors. Building a big rocket or building a little rocket, it's all the same, just one's bigger. This rocket was no different than some of the other rockets you may see that are just 1 inch in diameter. It's just a lot heavier, and there's a lot more glue.
So how'd you get into this?
I got back into the hobby, just wanting to fly rockets again. I had done it when I was younger and kind of picked it back up, found that the rockets had gotten bigger and meaner and more entertaining. I love stuff that flies. That's all there is to it. If it goes up, I enjoy it. Anybody with a love for things that fly, go fast, fire, smoke, and noise, it's what it's all about. The camaraderie, lots of good people, lots of good friends. Very unique crowd of really good people we have out here. Kids 7, 8 years old can get into it, and there are challenges that I have yet to face. So you can go anywhere you want with it. Right now I'm level 2. I'm in the midst of working on my level 3 project at this point. $20 will get you into the basic stuff. $50 will get you into high power. Basic would be small rockets that will fly on basically a C motor or below. You're looking at altitudes between 500 and 1,500 feet. Higher power is H motors and above, and you're looking at altitudes again from between 500 feet up to 4,000 feet at that point, and you can go beyond from there. Highest altitude I've flown is about 19,000 feet. Fastest speed is about Mach 2. And I like to fly clusters, things like that, so all my flights are pretty unique. Cluster is a multiple motors. You can either ignite them all on the launch pad or fire them simultaneously up in the air, firing like pairs of 2 and then pairs of 2 up in the air. Not much in the way of an advantage, but I find it to be more visually entertaining, and it's a lot more of a challenge. I'll be flying a 4 cluster, firing 2 H motors on the pad and air starting 2 I's. I haven't selected the motors yet, so I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a 5-second delay if things go as I have planned between the motors burning out, the boost it, and the sustainers igniting. Looking at an altitude of about 4,000 feet, and I couldn't even give you a speed, probably about Mach 0.75. There's not a lot making a full-time living in it that I'm aware of. I'm one of a few guys here who does it full-time. There's a handful of us. Just do it. I mean, it's easy, it's simple. Your local hobby shops will have the stuff to get you started. The internet is a great resource for finding ways to get into the little stuff all the way up to the big.
I notice you have these boxes with the signs and the padlocks on them. Can you tell me a little bit about them?
The signs and the padlocks, basically the padlocks are just to make sure that my inventory doesn't go away, to keep us safe, to keep the other rocket guys safe. The bigger motors are regulated by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. They like to know when I buy them, who I sell them to, just in case there happen to be any problems. It helps them keep track of what's going on. And the padlocks, like I said, just to keep it safe, and the signs let people know what's in there, and it's just a precautionary measure.
About how many of these rocket motors do you expect to go through in a weekend like this?
Between 150 and 200 would be my guess this year, at least at this launch. I bring out motors, igniters, glues to help any repairs or last minute things that need to be taken care of, extra parachutes, recovery systems, electronics, basically anything anybody could need to either make a repair or get something finished up last minute.
What do we have here?
That is a 54mm motor. It holds the K700, which is a K-class motor, produces 700 Newton-seconds of thrust on average per second. It's a level 2 motor. You have to be level 2 certified to fly something like that. And the motors go up from there or down. For example, this is a 38mm motor. This is a J-class motor. Holds the J350 and the J420 at this time. Aerotech doesn't have any other reloads for it. And motor sizes, I said, they keep getting smaller. This is a 29mm motor in a color pattern that Dr. Rocket calls their Desert Fire. It's a kind of a red-yellow anodized mix. Most popular motor, I'd say probably a J350, maybe an H242. J350 would fit in this case here. H242 fits in this motor. H242, small motor, hits pretty hard. It'll help you get a rocket between a lightweight rocket and a heavy rocket up off the ground. J350 is a bigger motor. It just falls into the level 2. It's a very introductory motor. Lots of guys will certify level 2 on it. It's probably the most popular level 2 cert motor. And you can see it's twice the size, so you're looking at a lot more speed and a lot more altitude. Reloads, a J350 is $40. H242 is $18 if I remember correctly. And motor cases, looking at approximately $100 for this one and about $70 for that one. They pretty much have an indefinite lifespan. I haven't replaced any of mine within, well, the past 5 years, with the exception of the couple that I've lost.
What sort of rocket body would they be wrapping around there?
Anything from a rocket basically the same diameter as the motor to, I've seen guys fly 5-inch diameter rockets that were over 10 feet tall on that motor. The biggest I have flown is a K and 4 I's, which is basically a motor of this size, and the other was 4 motors of that size. So 1 of these and 4 of these. And I've seen guys fly clusters up through 4 M's, which are larger than this here.
This is the DCX, and I fell in love with this rocket when I seen it on the Discovery Channel. I bought the small kit. Love the way it flies. It fights for every foot of altitude that it gets. And I attempted a upscaled version of it before on 5Gs, basically, 29 millimeters, and it didn't fly so well. This one, it's got a little bit more power, and she's a little better built too. You get better as you go, you know. And so, but I'm proud of it. I'm a little nervous. I'm going to attempt a cert level 2 today on this, which is kind of off the wall. I should use something a little simpler design, but I'm not that type of guy. I like to push the envelope. A lot of people bring tubes out, and this is what I show up with. It's a McDonnell Douglas design. They did a DCX, and unfortunately it's retired before it ever got into any kind of service. But what it was basically built for was an SSTO. That's a single stage to orbit, and the turnaround rate from coming back from space was supposed to be within 24 hours, and it's supposed to have a minimum of maybe 5 to 10 people as a ground crew. Send it right back to space 24 hours later. The cost to get it to outer space is maybe 30 to 40,000, you know, to put it up. And it does a lot of impressive stuff. During the test flights, during McDonnell Douglas's test flights, they got it up to an altitude, I think it was 1,000 feet or 1,200 feet, and then hovered straight across and come down and landed. And that was pretty impressive. That gets me fired up. I've always loved science fiction, space movies, things like that, but I never launched a rocket. And then I went to work for a good guy, Bill Cleary, and he bought me my first rocket. He had been launching some just hobby rockets, you know, off the shelf at the hobby store. And it was just G class and under, and he said just pick one out, and I built it, and ever since then it's gotten extreme now. There's certain fundamentals that you definitely need to know about right off the bat. CP, which is center of pressure, CG, which is center of gravity. All this is real critical in flight, or you're going to have an unstable flight. And then you can modify the kits. I've done many of those, and I personally prefer to certify on scratch-built rockets, just built from no instructions, no kits, and that's what this is all about too. What I love about this hobby really is just that it taxes my mind so much. I mean, I learned so much from this hobby. I mean, the science in it goes in many different directions. If you're into electronics, you know, it's there for you. If you're into design and structure, it's there for you. Okay, this is a Dr. Rocket reloadable motor system, and this is my pride and joy, really. I take a lot of good care of these. This is a K550. She's going to burn for about 3.1 seconds, and peak thrust is about 200 pounds of thrust. It ought to move this rocket real nicely. And then as soon as the motor cuts off, the drag's going to take effect, and she'll just throw the brakes on. She won't coast a long ways. But I'm running the plugged forward closure. It's got a Medusa nozzle, and which this is my first time ever, you know, for a K. It's my level 2 attempt, and I was a little nervous. It's exciting packing these motors. I mean, because you're doing some pretty impressive stuff. I mean, it's you know it's getting big now. The holes, what that does is that allows the propellant to come out of the holes. So if you open up more holes, then you're going to let the propellant, you know, exit the casing a lot faster. And the least amount of holes that you got means more restriction on the flame coming out. So you're going to get a lot slower burn time, and it's going to burn a lot longer. And now the more holes you got, the more fire she's going to throw out, and a lot hotter liftoff. I got mounted a key switch in the bottom of the rocket, so you see this out there on the launch pad, you know not to launch it for sure. So that's kind of basically what that is just a big reminder to arm your electronics. Here is the K550 where she'll go, and then here is for my outboard 29s. And so I've got an electrical conduit that comes out right here, so I can lift off on the core motor and then air start the 4 outboard motors. And I think that would be pretty spectacular. Let me take this nose cone off, and we'll get this shroud. I got composite graphite, carbon fiber on the top up here. This will help in case of a zipper, maybe, help strengthen this tube up. And I've also got it on the bottom of the rocket, kind of a heat shield type deal. And the shroud comes off. It's made out of styrene. And this is my altimeter bay. And right here is a blast plate. I take these these screws out, and there's 2 conduits that go inside of this tube, which there's my parachute. And so I'll top load my ejection charges in, bring them out these 2 holes, run them down these conduits, and then plug them into my altimeter. Then I turn my key on, and she should be ready to rock and roll. This is all aircraft plywood. I cut all the holes in it to lighten the load. And my outboard 29s are all on the outside of this 4-inch airframe here. And it's a lot of design, a lot of structure. That's what I was saying. I'm a big fan of the design and engineering of it. Here's just basically the same thing as what's on the other side, except for this bay is designed to hold a timer. And I've got 2 electrical conduits that I was showing you on the bottom. This is where my igniters would go. They'll run down here, and then I can plug them into the H128s, the 4 outboard motors. Should be coming down on an 8-foot parachute, which is a little big, but I mean, I can't have any damage. And she's actually pretty tough. Now, a stick or a stop or whatever could punch a hole in this, and I hope that doesn't happen. But this shroud will be screwed on, plugged on, and then we'll just be left up to the LCO to set her off. That was a beautiful flight.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, that's why I love that rocket.
Did it go exactly how you thought?
Yeah, the ejection was early. You know, that just, I guess you get better with experience, but the only thing I can think of was as soon as the Mach delay inhibitor timer quit, you know, started taking pressure readings, then it pressure spiked and popped, and so, but it's no damage.
So about what difference in time would that be, would you figure?
Maybe a 6, but I don't have that setting on my altimeter. I've got a 4, an 8, and a 12, so. All right, my prefect's inspecting my rocket right now, fixing to sign my paperwork. Thanks a lot, guys.
See you.
This is my whole family set of rockets. The one I have here, I call it Bananarama. It's an Eclipse made by PML, Public Missiles. It uses QT tubing, plastic tubing, nose cone, has an altimeter bay in. Made out of G10 as far as the fins. It will deal with motors all the way up through K700. This is my pride at the moment. Then my orange one here, that's actually my oldest son, Nick. He built that in the last couple weeks. It's also a Public Missiles kit, a Tethys. And he's going to launch that on probably a mid-H today, and maybe even higher depending on how the first launch goes. Then I have the Super Big Bertha. It's an Estes kit. That's my oldest daughter's, Tiffany, and she'll be launching that on the D12-5, also with parachute recovery, but so far this is the only one that has electronics in it. Then the little blue one, another one of my Tiffany's, that one's a two-stager. It'll probably go up and never come back using C's and B engines. But they'll first launch it on a C, then boost the B engine, and so it should go a couple thousand feet. What I've noticed through time, it seems to be their children start to get into the hobby. They did it a little bit when they were kids. Maybe they were big into the rockets. But their kids get back into it, and they notice how the hobby's expanded into larger stuff, and so they jump into the hobby. And before they know it, they're hooked into it, just like RC planes, and spending a decent amount of money making nice big rockets and shooting them over and over. It's almost like threefold. You have the building stage. People like to build rockets. And it might be years since you built a rocket, and once you get back into it, you realize how much fun it was. You're actually producing something, even if it's from scratch or from a kit. And then the launch, and then the retrieval, and then you can do it again. That's what's fun. Anytime you see one launch, the noise is just amazing, and the flame, none. 6,000 feet.
The rocket itself is relatively inexpensive. For us, the expensive part is in the hardware it takes to launch them. So something like this is going to cost $80, $100. The motor it's going to take to put into something like this is going to be anywhere from $35 to $80 every time you launch it. I work with a scouting group through our church, Royal Rangers, and I work with boys ages anywhere from 7 up through about 12 years old. And one of the events that we do as a group every year is Rocket Day, where we build the smaller Estes type rockets. When you're flying little rocket after little rocket after little rocket, it gets a little boring. And so I decided one year, I don't know, it must have been 4 years ago, that I'd go ahead and build one of the bigger kits. And when we launched it, oh man, compared, at least relatively speaking, it was incredible. It was great. It was loud. There was lots of smoke. You could see the flame coming out the bottom of the rocket. And once I saw that, and it's kind of, the adrenaline, that goes off, when you see the rocket ignite and go up in the air and everything's successful, and the parachute pops out, drifts down to the ground, you go pick it up, and you're all excited. And I was hooked. That was it. The kits you can build in a matter of days to a week. And then you can spend more time if you want to do a real high quality paint job or detailing or things like that. But within a few days to a week, you can have something built and ready to fly. The certification process right now, there's really 2 directions you can go. You can go with NAR, which is the National Association of Rocketry, and or you can go with TRA, which is the Tripoli Rocketry Association. And out here, probably the overwhelming majority of people are TRA. The 2 organizations both provide, training. They both provide, insurance that you can get through the organization, which, by the way, is required through both now. So you can't be a member and not be insured anymore, and that's a good thing. They both have certification programs of both level 1, 2, and 3. The process is basically the same for both, but the tests and things that they give differ somewhat in the content, but pretty much guarantee the same level of knowledge and competency.
I decided that if I wanted to spend very much time with my husband in his leisure, I was going to have to come out to the launches. So when I started coming out, I think after the first launch, I told him, you know, I think I'd like to do this. And he got me started and bought my first kit for that following Christmas, and also bought me a bunch of pieces that I had no idea what they were. And when I started putting them together, and he was kind of coaching me through this, that following February, I think it was Valentine's weekend, we went to a launch near Dallas, and one of the ladies said, "What did your husband get you for Valentine's Day?" And I said, "Well, he got me this wonderful trip. He took me on this wonderful trip to launch the rockets that he gave me for Christmas." So that's how I got started, and you know, I've kept up the interest, because when you go out to the launches, you see all these people doing things, and they're all very innovative in how they're doing them. Nobody does it alike. They share information. It's very inspiring, and that's why right after a launch, I do most of my, you know, thinking at the launches, but I do most of my work right after a launch, because you get very inspired and you don't want to lose that. Well, actually, this style kind of fell together. I like the way it looked. I like the more rounded edges. Basically, when I was talking to people who had done this, I found that this was for what I wanted to do, and this is a level 3 certification rocket. It's not going to go very high. It's not going to go very fast. It's going to be very visible. And with this conformation, it will be something that just kind of gets lobbed up into the air and comes down, and you can see your mistakes very easily there. Right now I'm a level 2, but a couple of days ago I did do a test flight on this rocket, and with just minimal alterations, it will be flying a level 3 at the next launch. So I'm going to certify at the next launch, I'll put it that way. This rocket has dual deployment. That means that it will have a chute on the main section, and it'll have a chute on the tail section. So when we have the electronics that have a charge in them, and they will set off a charge that blows off the tail section, which puts out a small chute to slow the rocket down. You want to slow it down because it's going to be at the altitude, say, of 4,000 feet. You want to slow it down without it free falling and picking up more speed as it falls, so that when it gets down to a level of about 500 feet, you're going to be able to put out a main chute, which will come out at the top section, and the nose cone will fall off, the main chute will come out, and it's the bigger of the two chutes, and it will, you know, hopefully and most likely, it will gently fall to the ground. This is the electronics bay, and this over here is a timer. There are brand names for timers and altimeters and things like this. These are both made by the same manufacturer. This is the timer, and this is the altimeter. Now, the altimeter will record information that whenever your rocket launch is over with, whenever you've brought it back to the pad or brought it back to your car, you can take these this plate off, and it will have the altitude of the actual launch. This is a redundant system, because this is such an important flight for me. I want to make sure that the charges go off when I want them to, and so I have both of these charges, the top one and the bottom one, wired to both of these pieces of electronics. So that way, if one just happens not to work, the other one will pick it up, and I will have a safe flight. If you're interested in getting into this sport, it's really not hard to do. All you have to do is find a local hobby shop. There's launches all over, and those people will know where they are. You ask questions when you get to the launch, go to people who seem to be in charge, and you'll find those people because they're everywhere. talk to those people, find out all the information you can, and you know, just buy you some rockets and get started. It's not that hard.
Yeah, I've been into rocketry for about, I don't know, 3 years or so. Started out with little SD skits, and then saw a little ad for a mid-power rocket company, which is the F&G Motors, actually North Coast Rocketry a few years back, and got that for Christmas, the set, and pretty much spend all my money on it, Christmas, birthday, and then whatever I can make working. It's a lot of fun. I've flown, my biggest motor yesterday was K700. It's about 2,500 unit seconds, and I got a 5.5-inch wide rocket to about 6,300 feet. So that was a lot of fun. Kind of crashed on the way down a little bit, but you know. Probably my best flight was the flight of the Magnum before that on a K550, a smaller K motor. It took me about 4 hours to find it after the launch because I just launched right near Austin in a smaller field, but worked perfect and it was real fun. Well, I'm pretty into science and math. I really like the whole conceptual stuff about it, and then the flame and the smoke, seeing the stuff take off, is a lot of fun, and just a real neat hobby. Most teenagers, like, are into cars and stuff, and this goes a lot faster. Well, most people would probably be at the F&G motor level. Those are a lot cheaper. They're about $10 a flight, and it's a lot of fun if you join one of the clubs because there's lots of great people out there. I mean, I'm probably have more adult friends than kids just through all the rocketry activities. I talk a lot on the internet to the people. My rockets aren't here. My biggest one is about 5.5 inches wide, and I guess 8 feet tall, weighed about 12 pounds loaded, and went a little bit over a mile on a pretty big motor, and that one's pretty nice. We actually used automotive paint to finish it, so it looked real nice. And then I've got a few smaller ones. I've got some 4-inch diameter rockets that I fly, and just a pretty wide range of the K and below motors. For this launch, I'm trying to write an article for the biggest rocket magazine. It's called High Power Rocketry. It's pretty much sort of the newsletter for the AAA Association. Pretty much just run down to the event, put in a lot of pictures, name off some of the flights and the details of the flights. And I mean, lots of people like reading those after, when you're bored sometime, don't have a launch for a month, go look at other people launching. Pretty much you learn from all your mistakes and don't do it again, and you'll do fine.
I love the smell of black powder. And I like to see something that you have built to go up in the air and come back down on a parachute successfully. That's a successful flight. And it's a great accomplishment, I think, if you can do that. I would start out with model kits and just start out with them. And then you can go to like Staples or Home Depot. You could buy you some mailing tube. Go to Lowe's and buy you some plywood, 1/4 inch or 3/16. And then you can get on the computer on internet and you can order you a nose cone. Or go to a hobby store that might sell them. And most of them cones will fit right into a 3-inch. And it's pretty simple. And you got to have the tools to cut your centering rings, to cut your wings out, and sand them. The Dremel tool really helps. It's a real good thing to be in the club because you can go to other people and they have ideas, they can help you out, talk about whatever you need to know. They're all willing to help. That's one thing I like about the club. They're really nice people. After watching this bow mark go up so nicely, my father-in-law and I, we thought about building another ball mark, upscaling it, and even having a drag race with 2 of them. So we ordered some phenolic tubing, 4-inch, and we upscaled it 1/8 of an inch, was it Gary? 1/3. And we have a timer on board that will air start 2 H165 redline motors when it takes off. I'm saying they're going to go from 2 to 2,500 feet.
Now, do all 3 motors go at once?
No. When I can show you the payload, we have a adept timer at the bottom, and it has an arm on it. When the thrust of this motor takes off, it throws the arm down, and when it stays engaged for 0.3 seconds, then it shoots 12 amps to these 2 ramjets here. We use phenolic tubing, and we've got a double line coupler all the way to the back end and up to here. And we've used glass cloth and epoxy to the motor tubes. We've glassed them to the motor tubes, which are real stout. And we have I've made these launch lugs out of just regular white pine. And we have these vinyl stickers that we ordered from Oklahoma City. And on the wings we have styrene that are laminated from both sides.
Now, why would you use styrene? What's the purpose of that material?
It's to strengthen the wings, because I'm afraid that with the plywood here it may do some vibration and just put a little bit more strength in it.
Have you flown these yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Hey, tell me a little bit about this drag racing thing. What's the point of that? How does that work?
We're just wanting to see who will go up the highest and the fastest. Gary's, his weighs 19.4 ounces loaded, and mine weighs 19, which I really don't think that's going to make any difference. But if both of the motors on the ramjets take off after the main motor takes off, then we're going to have a good race. It's going to be close. We have a 72-inch black and white chute for each rocket, and then the nose cones will come down separate on a 48-inch chute.
Now, I've noticed that you put a lot of detail into these machines, and tell me about your philosophy on that.
We just wanted to make them look original, like the kit, the North Coast kit, mainly, and just keep it plain. You know.
About how many hours you figure you got in these?
I'm saying a good 65 to 80 hours. A lot of hours. This is going to be the maiden flight.
All right.
Good job on those air starters.
That was great.
What we're going to mix today is a red propellant. 4 major components to a propellant. There's your binder and your metals, which is your fuel, and I'm going to go ahead and get those started right now. So if you come on in here and watch me, what we have is a mixture of HTBB, which is a rubber-based compound, aluminum, which is what our fuel is, and that's what actually gives us the temperature in the motor, because you want it temperature-based. And then the reason this looks so black is because we use a burn rate catalyst, something to control the burn rate, which is carbon black. And that actually controls the burn rate so we can stabilize it out. So if you look at it, it looks like molasses. That's really what we're trying to do here, is to get this started and get this mixed up. So basically what I've done is pre-measured this out. What we're going to mix up is 1,500 grams of propellant, and based on certain percentages to achieve a desired mix rate, which are secrets of those people who develop the propellant formulations. That's what they hold closest to their chest. I do it for the sheer enjoyment of it. I've always told people, if you're going to mix your own propellant for cost, get out, because you're going to cut a corner somewhere and you're going to do things the wrong way and you're going to end up getting hurt. AP, ammonium perchlorate based propellants, which is what we're mixing here, which is composite, is very inert. It truly is. There's really no explosion possibilities with it. What you've got to do is make sure that you never get what we call a fuel air burst. If you've ever heard of grain silos, when the grain dust gets strong enough in the top of the collector area and they blow up, that's essentially what we're talking about. So what we do is the metals come in the binder, which is what I've got going here, and by wetting the metals like that, the powdered aluminum, you pretty much eliminate any explosion possibility. So what we've got in the bowl now is we've got powdered aluminum, carbon black, and HTPB, and we're going to let that mix. And I said there was 4 major components, and what I said were the 4 components was the binder, the fuel. In our particular case, we're using a colorant, which in this case will be strontium carbonate to make the red color. The colorant, I just want it to look red. And then the 4th component, which is what we need the most of, it's our actual fuel source, and that's the ammonium perchlorate. And we're going to go back so I can measure out what I need to do. So, okay, so for this batch, for 1,500 grams, when you take out the weight of everything else, I need 875 grams of 200 micron ammonium perchlorate. So what I need to do is measure that out. And I got to start by getting the tare weight on my bowl. I start with 169 grams, and I need 875 grams in addition to that. This particular weight here is 1,000 grams. Back to 0, let's go to 44. So what I'm going to do now is add ammonium perchlorate to that until it balances out, which gets me to where I need to be on the mix. AP's highly moisture sensitive, so you try to keep it in a sealed container. It's actually pretty inert as it comes until you add a fuel source to it, like aluminum. This is 200 micron AP, and I keep it in a bag, in a barrel, and then I actually keep desiccant bags inside of it to keep the moisture out of it. If AP gets moisture in it, it clumps, and you'll notice how fine this AP stays by staying. So what I'm trying to do now is measure out enough AP to simply get that to balance out on the scale. And we're actually working to the 10th of a gram here on our formulations. We try to keep these accurate to the 10th of a gram. So now I'm very close, so I'm just going to come back in until the scale balances out. A little bit more. There we go. It really doesn't take much to make a difference. Your most important factor is your ratios, not your total propellant mix, not the 1,500 grams. The important factor is your ratio of AP to fuel to binder to curatives. Since it is so easy to be that accurate, why not be that accurate? It's pretty much the way we look at it. The more accurate you are on creating your propellants, the more accurate you're going to be ultimately. And I'm going to go back and recheck my numbers one more time. So let's move back on over. The mixer's working on the mixer's still working on the binder, smoothing it out. What you want to do is you want to keep mixing this binder until it gets very smooth, like almost like pancake syrup. And then while it's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and sift my AP. Just in case we get lumps in it, you'll see a few in the bowl. You want to run it through and sift it.
Where can you get this?
Ammonium perchlorate can be acquired from several chemical suppliers. Pyrotechnic houses will be the kind that'll supply this. One of the common suppliers in the rocketry industry is a company called Firefox, and I believe they're out of Indiana. We being the Midwestern rocket community, recently went together and we acquired 5,000 pounds of ammonium perchlorate for ourselves in barrels and then distributed it to all of the members. I believe there was about 50 members involved in that purchase. As you can see, I've got a few lumps, so I'm going to take the blood end of my thing just to sift those lumps out. Now that I'm working with the AP, this is one of the areas where I want to make sure that I'm not creating dust. I want to make sure that I work down around. You notice we're working in a garage with all the doors open. You want to make sure You're not working in a stale environment so that the air can stagnate. You want to make sure your air is always moving through your space. That eliminates any possibility of collecting enough dust for a fuel air burst. So now that that's done, and this is my 875 grams of ammonium perchlorate. So I've got my binders mixing here. This is my colorant, which is my strontium carbonate. And you notice it looks a whole lot like AP. My ammonium perchlorate, my curatives are out setting in the sun to thin out. I'm going to start adding, or actually making propellant now by adding the colorant first. I add the colorant into the binder, and to get it mixed thoroughly through the binder, the strontium carbonate tends to be a very fine powder. And as such, you want to get it mixed thoroughly through. I just cut a hole in the corner of the bag, and I'm going to start very slowly adding it to this mix. What I want to do anytime I'm working with these chemicals is I want to keep watching up in this area to make sure that I never see any dust. If I see any dust, I'm just going to stand back, let the dust clear, let the wind that we let come through the garage take care of that. This is a 275 watt KitchenAid mixer that a lot of the people who are going to end up watching this probably have in their own garages. Actually their own kitchens. We say garage, but most people don't use mixers in their garages. I've added all the colorant in. And now that I've added the colorant in, I want to start adding the ammonium perchlorate to the mix. I want to add about 2/3 of the ammonium perchlorate in small batches. I'm going to use a little cup to do this. I'd add it down the side of the mixer, making sure again that I don't create any dust. Add it very slowly, as you can see. Because what you want to do is you want to make sure that your material stays wetted. As soon as we get the bulk of this material in here, I'll give you an example of why you want it to stay wetted. These chemicals are very safe when they're wetted in with the binder. When they're in their powder form, as I mentioned before, then you can get the possibility for a fuel air burst, and that's one of the things that we want to make sure never happens.
For instance, like the AP, is it combustible in of itself?
It takes a tremendous amount of energy to light the AP. What the AP is actually an oxidizer designed to work with a fuel source to burn. Our fuel source in this particular case is the aluminum, the powdered aluminum that we're using.
Now, where do you get the powdered aluminum?
Again, from one of the pyro supply houses that we buy the AP from. It's all very commonly available chemicals. You can get most of it in any chemical store. A lot of what we do, in fact, the chemicals independently, the powdered aluminum is the only one that is actually considered a hazardous material.
Does that mean that you have to have some type of license to get the aluminum?
Not to get the aluminum, you don't have to have a license, but you have to pay hazardous material freight charges when you purchase that. So we just keep adding very slowly. I'm doing this to try to make sure that we never have any dust. I want to add about 3/4 of my ammonium perchlorate, and then I want to let it keep mixing until we cannot smell any ammonia coming out of the bowl. If you can smell right now, you'd smell an ammonia smell, almost like what you get with a household cleaner. If you've ever used Mr. Clean or something like that, it's a very similar smell. And by having your binder completely coating your AP, that stabilizes the burn rate and makes sure that we're burning very stably. And you notice as I'm adding this, the mixture is getting thicker and thicker. In this particular propellant with the carbon black, it's going to be hard for you to see. If we had one of the gray propellants where we're not using carbon black, you can see we're almost to the consistency of like a chocolate chip cookie dough. This club was taught by a gentleman from Tennessee by the name of Jim Mitchell. He is actually Dynamic Propulsion Systems. I'm wearing his t-shirt. Jim has burned a whole lot of propellant to learn this system as well as he has to be able to pass it on to other people. And as I said, the reason I like to do my own propellant is when I put a rocket out there on the pad on experimental launch days, it's my scratch-built rocket, it's my scratch-made propellant, it's my ejection charges, it's mine. And it's just, for me, it's a huge thrill. So now what I want to do is I want to come in and I want to scrape down the sides of this bowl because I want to make sure that I don't have any inert material laying around on the side of the bowl. I want to make sure everything gets coated with the metal or gets coated with the binders. That stabilizes my burn rate, and it also protects and make sure that when I pack this into my liners, that I'm going to get a good pack. And what I mean by good pack is we pack into an inner liner, and we have to get a good bind. That's why we're using a rubberized binder. We have to get a good bind to the paper liner to make sure that the propellant can't burn down the back side of the grain. You only want the top and bottom faces and the core actually burning. Now I've got a little propellant on me. That's always a no-no, so I need to take an opportunity here to clean my hands. You just want to make sure that the propellant stays in the thing. Now that we have made propellant, this is a self-oxidizing source. So should we light a piece of this, it's going to burn until it's gone. You cannot put it out. So what you don't want is you don't want this on your clothing, your hands, etc. Now the curatives we use are actually poisons. And in fact, one of the curatives is isocyanate. So once you'll notice is, once I add the curatives to this mix, we'll do everything from then on with gloves on our hands, with plastic gloves on our hands. So the HTPB is a rubberized, it's basically a rubber base. So without something to make it cure, it's going to stay in a rubber form. And the propellant would stay moldable and malleable. What we want is we want it to be malleable for a while till we get it packed into the propellant liners. Then we want it to set up and take on a more solid form. And that's what the curative does. And as I said, one of the primary curatives is isocyanate. So what you're going to see is, I'm going to set an egg timer here because, and I'm going to go to gloves now that I'm going to start working with the curatives. And from this moment on, everything we'll do gloved. You could wear gloves through the whole process. I don't, because they just make my hands sweat. So I always just cut the top half off the bottom. Hopefully you won't get a chance to film me cutting my finger.
It's basically one-time use.
Yep. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave the curative set aside for right now. And if I smell down in that bowl, I can still smell ammonia, so which means I'm not ready for the curatives yet. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scrape the bowl back down. Make sure again I've got everything down in the binder.
What about the mixer? Do you need to have one that you don't have any exposed electricals?
Yeah, you notice that we use the KitchenAid mixers for two reasons. Number one, they have nothing electrically exposed. They're entirely enclosed. They draw air in from the back and they expose the air out the front. And by doing so, we can make sure that we're always drawing in fresh air out of the back and never having the opportunity to expose any of our metals and or ammonium perchloride to the electrical component. So what I've got now is I've got about a quarter of my AP left, and I've got my curatives to add. As soon as I get rid of the smell, which we're getting close, I'm going to add the curatives. And once the curatives are in the mixture, I've got about 15 minutes before I need to start actually packing this into the propellant. This is a fairly fast cure mixture. It cures fairly quickly and has about a 6-month shelf time. This mixture is designed to be mixed and packed today and cored and flown tomorrow, and we've done that many times. I'll label the sides of the tubes when I pack it into it. What kind of propellant is. These will be labeled red with the date, today's date, so I know what day I made that propellant. We've let our AP mix in our binder here for about 15 minutes now, and all the ammonia smell is gone, so we're in a good position to add the curatives. I want to stop, scrape down the beater first. Again, you want to make sure you're careful. Keep the propellant in the bowl. Don't be slopping it around the table. If you're not a patient person, a person who can move slowly, don't try to make your own propellant. So now I'm going to turn the mixer back on slow speed, and I'm going to add my curatives. Just slowly pour those down the side of the bowl. And you'll notice that the mix will actually now wetten up a bit since I'm adding all of this.
You're on a timer?
Yep, now I'm on a timer. Now that I've dumped that in, I'm going to set my egg timer back to 15 minutes. And we'll actually now be working. So within the next 15 minutes, I've got to get this mixed. And I've got to be starting to pack in a tube because I've got about 30 minutes of pot life on this now. And since I've got to pack this in the liners, I need some of that time to do that. I use 15 minutes because I've got 15 minutes to spare. and that way I can make sure that everything's mixed up fairly thoroughly. And I'm not going to have any dry spots or non-bound propellant. Now that that's done, I'm going to continue to add the remainder of my AP. We do it by the 3/4, 1/4 rule to keep your propellant from getting too thick that your mixer can't turn it.
Why wouldn't you mix on a cool day?
Because you'll have trouble with it curing. It is like an epoxy. It's a temperature-based cure. When you add the curative in, you can actually feel the side of the bowl will get a little bit warm. So on a colder day, you'll have trouble with your propellant actually curing and setting up properly. And it's thickened back up nicely. I've got all my AP in. And now I need to start scraping my bowl about every 3 or 4 minutes until we get to the point that I'm ready to start putting it in the liner, because I just want to make sure nothing collects on the sides of the bowl. You want to make sure it's all down in with the propellant. What I'm going to pack this in is going to be a 38mm Baby K motor. Should be about 1,300 Newton-seconds of total impulse. The motor's 38mm in diameter, a little over 1.5 inches, and it's 24 inches of propellant. It'll be 6 4-inch grains. So it's a very long, high thrust motor. It'll only burn for about 1.1, 1.2 seconds. So it's going to come in somewhere around a K1200 to a K1300. So I'm going to fly it in my 3-inch, 8-pound rocket. It should kick it off the pad pretty quickly. At this point in time, this is really a very inert mixture. And when we're done packing, I'm going to save a little propellant out, and I'll give you an example of just how inert this mixture is. We'll actually burn a little bit of propellant. It'll burn in its wet state. You just can't fly it right now because it would slump down and it would close up the core and the motor would overpressurize. This is not by any means an explosive. Propellant is not explosive. When we burn the sample I'm going to burn today, you'll notice it'll burn very slowly, almost like a match head. Propellant is, however, pressure sensitive, and that's how it works. When you contain it within a motor case, it then has the ability to generate pressure. That pressure accelerates the burn. So what you're trying to do is come up with a nozzle diameter and a core geometry that stabilizes that pressure and allows it to burn in a controlled manner. There are people much smarter than I who have figured all of those formulas out. All it can do is overpressurize an aluminum case. And all of our motor cases are aluminum. There's regulations prohibiting us from making a motor case out of steel. And the reason being, aluminum will not fragment. So if you overpressurize a motor, the first design of the motor is to blow the nozzle out the back, and it'll just go down into the ground and nothing happens. If you get one that overpressurizes worse than that, what'll happen is it'll actually split the side of the case out, and aluminum will stay in a single piece. We have only had that happen once in 400 plus experimental flights. And that's why, as you've been to our range, our rocket range, you've seen why we are very cautious to observe certain safe distance requirements. There is an accepted practice for how far you need to be away from a rocket of a given impulse to prevent any crowd damage or the possibility for anyone to be injured, and we've never had an injury in the rocketry hobby, so evidently they figured those formulas out very well. If you want to learn how to do this, find a group that's doing it. Watch them do it several times, which is how we did it. Watch them pack, watch them clean their tools, watch them how they behave around the mixer. Watch how careful they are to make sure that they never get any particles in the air, never generate any dust. You notice everything we've done today, I've moved very slowly, very deliberately. And that's just because we've been doing it for a while. But we learned that by watching another group. And you'll notice that, well, you haven't noticed because we paused a couple times, but we've stopped so that I can ask my co-mixers here questions. You know, timings, etc. You've got to work together as a group. There's a lot less chance for someone to miss a step when there's 6 of you. And one of you can say, hey, wait a minute, didn't we need to do this? Here's another secret to propellant mixing. Anything that touches the ammonium perchlorate, the binder, etc., goes in an entirely separate trash can. In Kansas, we still have the ability for exterior burning. So what we call this is the burn bag. So what we do is all of our trash, when I'm done, my gloves will go in here. And then we'll actually take this out to a location where we can burn it and just burn it. Then you've gotten rid of all of your trash. Egg timer's about ready to go off, but I know it's done, so I'm gonna go ahead and what I want to do now is I want to make sure that I get as much off of this as I can because this is propellant. And I don't want to waste any. Now that we're going to dump it into the other bowl, you'll notice exactly how thick it is. And this is rocket propellant. At this moment in time, this is ready to go. See how it's coming out in lumps? It kind of looks like tar. And that's from the carbon black. These are our liners. What we've got here is we've got a combination of an inner liner and an outer liner. I'm keeping the outer liner on it right now to give it additional strength when I pack the propellant into it. But essentially what we've got is a glassine paper. The inside is just raw, unfettered paper. The outside is a glassine liner on it. When we pack, the propellant will bind itself to the paper on the inside. That way it can't burn down the back side of the propellant. So what we're going to do is I'm going to come over here and set up. Dennis is going to give me little golf ball size pieces of propellant, actually smaller than golf ball for 38. 54 we'd use golf ball size. And then I just take a packing rod and just tamp that down into the bottom. What you want to avoid here at all costs is air bubbles. Air bubbles, or what we call entrained air, actually will accelerate your burn and can cause a motor to behave unexpectedly. So now we just keep continuing this process until this tube is full. This is not like black powder. None of us in this club will mess with black powder.
Too dangerous.
Too dangerous. Okay.
How come you're not putting a hole down the center of this?
I'm going to drill and core those later. In these small loads, it would be so impossible to pack around the core that what we do is we just go ahead. These will only have, the top grains will have 3/8 of an inch core and it'll taper to 5/8 of an inch as I move down the motor. So you're not wasting enough propellant to really worry about it. And it's just, quite honestly, it's one of the things you do. My neighbors would miss it if I quit doing that because they all come out when I core and you get all those core shavings. They burn fairly aggressively because there's a lot of surface area on them. And we burn those on holidays. And my neighbors really, quite honestly, enjoy it. Last year at Christmas, I had just packed red and green propellant. So I burned a pile of red and a pile of green, and it illuminated the neighborhood quite nicely, and all my neighbors are wanting to know what color I want to pack for Christmas this year. So I've got to be watching what I'm doing here, because what you want to make sure you do is that you're getting a good tamp on this propellant, and you're keeping it down. You're keeping your tamp rod square so you're not driving air bubbles into it. When I get up here a little bit further, I'm going to switch and go to a larger rod. I don't use it on the bottom because I have a tendency to kink the tube with it. So Dennis, if you would hold that. Now I can get a much tighter tamp on this with a lot fewer tamps. You know, I was hitting it about 6 times per ball before, or actually about 10 times per ball, and now I only need to hit it about 5 or 6 because with the larger rod, I'm not leaving enough surface area to really worry about driving the propellant back up around the side of the tube. We'll pack almost 30 pounds of propellant today.
So far 6.
Yeah, we've packed 6 so far, and I've actually got 2 more to go after this. You've got 2 more, so yeah, we'll be well over 10 batches today. And it'll be a good 10-hour day by the time we're done. Dennis, I'm going to go down on the floor. My shoulder's getting tired. I can't do. Can you scrape me down, Dennis? See, notice how my end of my packing stick is rounded off some. Dennis is going to scrape that back square now. Every time I pull that rod out, my job is to look at that rod and make sure it's not getting round on the end. And when I was talking about the size of my motor, this is a single load for that motor. It will burn all of this, all 24 inches of this propellant in a single firing. So it's a pretty aggressive motor. A gentleman in Oklahoma, one of the members of our club, put in the time and effort to figure out the geometry on this motor. And like I said, there are people who I trust for that knowledge.
So what's the largest column motor you've seen?
At Airfest in the year 2000, we flew a 3/4 scale night smoke on a P7000 motor. The motor was 6.5 inches in diameter and roughly 67 inches long, a little over 5 feet long. The rocket weighed 220 pounds on the pad, and that motor put that rocket over 12,000 feet. And it was safely recovered 3/4 of a mile away from the launch site. So first stick is done. We've packed most of the propellant. I've got a little bit left over here. And I want to keep this. Normally I would just go ahead and pack this into one of my tubes, but I want to keep this as an example to illustrate just how safe propellant is. Once it's been mixed into the binder and gotten to this stage, so what we're going to do is we're just going to make a little ball of this, and then we'll go out in the backyard on a brick and we'll just burn it. And you can get an idea to see how safe this is. So I'm just going to make a little shape. Said it's just pretty much like cookie dough. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay the propellant down. I'll peel a little bit off on the end here. Ask Darren to light that up. As you notice, it actually takes quite a bit of heat and flame to light this. Yeah, there we got flame on it. Still have flame on it. Still have flame on it. Now once it lights, that's the red. That's the strontium carbonate. Nice. Notice how slow it's burning? Outside of a rocket motor, this is completely safe.
And how hard it was to light.
Yeah, and how hard it was to light. In fact, we've noticed that when, in the one overpressurization that we have had that I mentioned, when the propellant grains came out the bottom, they actually extinguished themselves and were laying there unburned. So yeah, beautiful flame. Yeah. That's the red one. Now when that comes out high pressure out of the back of a rocket motor, it's even more pretty. It's even deeper red. Yeah, burning, still burning. Isn't that beautiful though? Yeah. And if you come in here and you zoom in on the block, you'll notice there's absolutely no residue. Ammonium perchlorate propellant burns completely up. There's no remaining residue when it's done. So now all we have to do is clean up. We do that by just turning our gloves inside out, and everything gets thrown away. And we're done. We've made rocket motors.
I traveled out to the great state of Texas, to Amarillo, the headquarters of Pot Rocks, the panhandle of Texas Rocketry Society. So how did you get involved in rockets?
Well, the first, I was probably, I guess, early teen years. You know, I flew the little Estes model rockets and stuff, and of course, you know, I kind of lost interest in it, you know, as I got a little bit older. And one day I was on the internet, and I can remember it perfect. I was reading about an article about the weird stuff people sell on eBay. Heard about this Russian submarine for sale, and I thought, okay, I've got to see this. And it was in a section, I believe it was called military memorabilia. So I saw some rocket parts and stuff, and just old, you know, fins, airframes, stuff like that. And I got thinking, I wonder what's going on with rocketry these days. So I started searching through the internet, found Tripoli, the website for Tripoli, and noticed they had a prefecture here in Amarillo, and called up Pat one day and introduced myself, and the rest is history. I'm treasurer of the club now and spending a lot of money on this stuff. You know, see if there's either a Tripoli or NAR club in your area. It's easy to get on the internet and look either on the NAR, which is the National Association of Rocketry, or Tripoli Rocketry Association. See if there's a club nearby. They have phone numbers, email addresses listed for the officers of the club. Give them a call. Send them an email, they'll set you right up. You can spend basically as much as you want. Some of the machines you've seen out here are $1,000 plus rockets going off. Some of the little stuff that, you know, you go to a hobby store, maybe spend, I don't know, $15, $20 for a kit, a little bit more for the glue and some motors and put it together. So the rocket I'm flying today, it's, I got each part I ordered most of the parts from one company. It's not a kit. It's all different parts put together, but for all practical purposes, it would be a kit if it was just in a box. But I think my total cost, including the motor and the fuel, probably about $400. I think my favorite part are the people. These people are absolutely fascinating. There are some real rocket scientists out there, and you'll run into people that you never would dream could be so involved and so knowledgeable about a subject. Some of these people out here they just absolutely amaze me. Flying the rockets for me is a little bit stressful because I'm always worried, you know, if I make sure I've done everything right. I'm worried about blowing something up or tearing something up. But all right, well, what I'm doing today is I'm assembling a DPS 38mm motor. Basically, this is the motor tube or the motor case. It's an aluminum case that's extremely strong for the high pressure. And this is a motor liner that will go inside the case, and then these are individual fuel grains that will go inside the liner. And the grain geometry on this motor calls for 3 4-inch grains and 2 2-inch grains with the cores drilled out of them. And the idea is the bigger the core, the lower down on the motor it goes. This is the nozzle end of the motor, so I'll have the biggest cores down here, which happens to be this 5/8 core. I actually have 2 5/8, so they'll stack. These 2 will be at the bottom, this one will be the next up, and then these 2 1/2 inches will go on top. This is the nozzle end, so they'll stack in there as such. Ideally, you would have a cone. The internal core would be in a cone shape, although we have to drill these out, so they're going to step down as such. But it has to do with the burn. The motor originally starts burning from the top, and it burns down, and as it's burning, the surface area inside is continuing to expand. And that has to do with the type of burn, as far as if it's a regressive burn or progressive burn. And I'm not that much of a chemist or a physicist to explain the advantages or disadvantages of one design over the other. But for the purposes of this particular motor and the particular formulation of this fuel, we're using the sizes I explained earlier. It basically controls the speed of the burn and controls the pressure inside the case. All right, now, so the first thing I'm going to do here is I've labeled the nozzle end so I know which end to load it in the motor. And I'm going to load these small 1/2 inch grains are going to go at the top, so I'm going to load them in first and just shove everything one after another. But I'll take a little bit of high temperature grease. This is just a type of wheel bearing grease, but it's good under extreme temperatures. And I'll just go along here and coat all the grains up so it'll make it easier to slide it into the liner. And also the little bit of layer of grease helps, it's a little bit of a heat insulator. There's not much grease there, but every little bit helps. And in conjunction with that, the phenolic motor liner tube there, it does the job, what it needs to do. Because the heat transfer, the main thing about the aluminum case isn't so much the pressure, although if you get over pressure it will split, but the heat can also literally melt it. You know, the melting point of aluminum's pretty low as far as metals go. And today I'm doing a dual deployment on my altimeter. It'll, hopefully if everything goes right, it'll deploy a drogue chute at apogee and main chute at 500 feet. And this is my first attempt at dual deployment, so we'll see how that goes. I'm a little gun shy because of the fact that the last one I blew up, so hopefully this one will be better. I'm a level 2 flyer in Tripoli, and I got my level 2 just about a year ago at this time. And I was lucky. The first flight I flew level 2 attempt, I had a minor separation just before the rocket under the parachute before it actually came down to the ground, so I didn't get my certification then. The second attempt was successful. And then a few months later, my third flight was when I had my little mishap. So and I haven't flown since then. So now we're going to go ahead and slide the grains in there. So we'll start with our smallest grains and work our way up, or down as the case may be. Sometimes these can be a little tough getting in there.
Where do you get these grains?
Well, these are homemade. Our club, we're into experimental rocketry, and we our level 2 members, a lot of them, we actually mix our own fuel. We have the chemicals and the formulas, and so this is this particular fuel mix is one of Pat Gordzlick's special little touches. That is kind of tough. All right, and then the 5/8. Tell you what, I'm gonna have to go with this bulkhead a little bit just to get a little bit of, there we go. Get over here in the center a little bit. There we go. All right. Now we'll grease up the motor liner real good. And this is a good idea to get this thing greased up pretty good, because when it burns, this phenolic will char and bake. And if you have it greased up real good, it's a lot easier to get out of that motor case. A lot of people, I noticed Neil's over here pounding and pounding and pounding trying to get his stuff out. So a little extra doesn't hurt anything at all. And once again, that little bit of grease on this outside here adds as an insulator, a heat insulator. And it's amazing, you wouldn't think, you know, a little bit here and a little bit there would make that much difference, but it does. So and I hope this is gonna fit. There we go. Oh yeah, yeah. That's a great fit. Sometimes the tolerances between the aluminum and the phenolic are off a little bit, and you'll either get a real loose one, which you don't want it burning on the outside, or a real tight one, which you just can't get in there. But this one is just right. If it's too loose, you can burn through the phenolic and it'll start burning on the outside, which totally changes your grain geometry, which basically you're increasing the surface area of the burn on the grain. And that's going to cause it to burn extremely fast, extremely high pressure. You blow your case up. Okay, now what we'll do, we'll put this little nozzle in here, and as you see, this is a divergent type nozzle that Quentin was talking about the other day. And it's basically the big deep end goes up against the grains, and that shallow short end is where the fire comes out. The O-rings seal up around the liner here so that we don't have any blow by on exhaust gases. Basically all I'll do here is grease up the O-ring, because what happened on the shuttle was one of the O-rings cracked and exhaust gas slipped out around it and vented to the outside. When it should have been going down through the nozzle, it slipped around and basically punched a hole, you know, burned a hole in the side of the SRB, and that, you know, I believe if I remember correctly, and then that just burned a hole like a cut torch right into the main fuel tank. There we go. Okay. Now I can slip that in there. Slide the nozzle in there now with the shallow end toward the grains. I'm just gonna slide that in there like so. Push it in there a little bit. And now I'm gonna put my spacer ring in here, they call a thrust ring, and then what I'm going to do is take one of my snap rings here, and this thing is actually beveled. It's flat on one side and somewhat beveled on the other, and I want to make sure I've got it in there right because the flat side fits up. That sounded like a big one. I got to get out there. These snap rings can be treacherous, so I always like to put my hand over it like that. Yep, that's what I was talking about right there. Okay, and now all I have to do on this end is basically the same thing. I'll grease up this O-ring. Get your hands so greasy and everything, it's hard to hang on to it. Now, put our bulkhead that also has another O-ring on it. It goes in the top end. Push it down. Snap the O-ring into, or the snap ring into place. Make sure I got that right. That's a loaded motor. Basically, it's ready for flight. Put it in the rocket, put the igniter in it, and it's ready to go to town. So I want to see it go up, parachute come out, come down all in one piece. I can fly that again. Well, it was great up until the main chute didn't deploy, and that was just, I think the problem is I have to look at when I get it back. But I'm thinking just not enough powder in the ejection charge. And the chute was in there pretty tight, so next time I'll be sure to wrap that chute a lot tighter so it slides in a little easier. Put maybe an extra gram of black powder in the ejection charge. Oh, that was only, well, maybe 1,500, 2,000 feet. I was thinking it was going to go a lot higher than that.
You pretty happy though?
Well, yeah, if it comes back in one piece, I'll be happy. No doubt about it. Now, if I was trying for a certification on that flight, I wouldn't have gotten it because the main didn't come out. But the rocket is built like a tank, and I'm hoping it's basically going to be all in one piece and ready to fly again tomorrow. I'll do a little bit of adjustments, mainly on the ejection charge, and try it again tomorrow.
Well, I've got the DPS cases that a lot of the other experimentalists are using here, 38 millimeter, but I'm modifying it slightly to operate with sugar-based propellant instead of the composite propellants others are using. Because it's cheap, it's so non-toxic I could eat a couple pieces of it and probably not even get sick. They use potassium nitrate in cooking on occasion. in small amounts. Of course, it's sugar, so I don't have to actually order anything. Most of these composites use a half dozen funky chemicals. Half of them are poisonous. I am a machinist. I'm making my own nozzles and other parts, like these spacer rings. I made my own graphite nozzles. I'll make other parts later. I'll make other casings later. I may stick with the sugar. I may drop it after a while, after I use up the chemicals I've got. I'm actually more interested in some of these smaller ones. These ones I can fly in my front yard just like the little Estes motors. I've got one rocket here that'll take some of them, and there again, it's interesting. I can burn a lot of them. They're actually cheaper than the Estes motors. Most of these rockets, you have to have a minimum chamber pressure for the propellant to work correctly. So you're choking the case to build up chamber pressure and then accelerate the gases through the nozzle to create thrust. If you just burn it in the open air, it would burn slowly and just make a smoke cloud. In fact, with a larger nozzle, that's all this did was make a big old flame and smoke cloud. No real good thrust at all. So I had to do it 2 more times, get smaller and smaller nozzle to where my chamber pressure came up around 800 PSI. And at that point, I was getting supersonic flow through the nozzle. And that's where the thrust comes from, is the high-speed flow. Oh, and another advantage of the sugar motors is I can take a dirty nozzle, go like this in water, and it's clean. It just goes away, all the residue. It just melts in water. If you wanted to get into high power, I would join one of the organizations and start picking up knowledge of larger rockets, one power level at a time. You have to become a member to fly the high power anyway, but you can certainly fly F and G motor rockets, which is going to teach you a lot that you're going to need to know for the larger stuff. In fact, in most G-powered rockets will take an H motor for your level 1 certification anyway. So you can you often use the same rocket for multiple levels of power. It's a hybrid motor. It uses a solid plastic fuel grain, and it uses nitrous oxide, laughing gas, as an oxidizer. The nice thing about nitrous oxide is it's a non-flammable as far as the DOT is concerned. And the truth is that's what it is. Until you get to 500 degrees, it's non-flammable. At 500 degrees, the oxygen starts coming away from the nitrogen, and you can use it as an oxidizer. So I preheat the motor, release the nitrous oxide, and it's a continuous process from there. So I managed to make my first K-motor flight using an 800cc tank on a J-sized fuel grain. That one's packed up at the moment, but this is a custom injector that I made and a custom oxidizer tank, which is going to go with this same casing. There, custom hybrid, all modular. Well, the injector system here is a copy of the Hypertech system that the other motor uses. It uses the same system of a fill stem plugging the injector, uses the same injector jets, O-rings and stuff as far as that's concerned, and the venting here. All I had to do was design that into a piece that would go with O-rings and a snap ring to fit this case. It was wonderful. It was fantastic. Like I said, it was my first K flight ever. I've never been power hungry, so I could have flown Ks years ago, and I'm just now getting around to it. I've always enjoyed flying the hybrids. I was looking up research papers, government research papers on hybrids several years before they hit the market, and it took a while to get everything together to where I could build one that worked. And this custom one, I've burned it once in my backyard, and it's ready to go out here. It's just like the Hypertech system, so it's really a no-brainer. I know it's going to work. I know how it's going to work. I will put it on a thrust stand later, but I don't need to know it's going to work for me. Okay, that's about 1988 when me and the rocket were both a good bit younger. I first flew it on an I motor and 12 SDC motors for fire and smoke. It's always been a crowd pleaser. I've probably flown it 20 times now. About.
What type of rocket?
It's just a high power rocket. It'll fly on I and J motors. It'll handle the hybrid motors. Uses the Estes motors for smoke. This one, it's called the Techstar. It's got a Texas flag motif. I've got a Texas flag 60-inch parachute for the main and a Texas flag bandana about 20 inches for the drogue chute. So it's, my wife talked about moving to Oklahoma. What am I going to do with my parachutes? Oklahoma parachutes? I don't think so. I've been keeping a log book as soon as I started as an adult. My very first flights went into a log page. I've updated the style of the pages over the years, but I've got a continuous book. I'm about 1 or 2 flights away from hitting 1,200 flights as an adult. This one here is called the Redshift. I've been flying that for several years. I originally built it to take the Hypertech hybrid. Last year I set a personal record of 5,666 feet with it using an almost antique Vulcan Smoky Sam motor. This one here is called a VB Extreme. It's actually a kit. Actually belongs to my wife. She's had it to 8,800 feet. So I got a few thousand feet to go to beat her record. It flies on solid propellants. It's possible to put the hybrid in it, but I don't think it's a good idea. It flew on a J90 for that record high flight, uses a single deployment altimeter, which is part of its problem. It doesn't have dual deploy, so it drifts a long way, even on a small parachute. The Mach 2, it started as a kit where the nose cone and decals came from, but it turned into a completely custom rocket. That's usually what happens with most kits I get. Whether I bought the kit or somebody bought it for me, it's usually just a source of parts. I'll start modifying it, and the fin design actually came from a kit that was not produced by a company that never made it all the way into production. And I liked the design, so I copied it. Used the decals that it came with. Right now it's set up with a timer in the nose cone, and it's going to be flying with sugar motors later today.
Well, Pat and I, ever since we've been married, have done rockets, and our joke is that we didn't know that there was as many crazy people as we are out there. It's addictive. When you go out and you build your first rocket, and you've built it, and you put all the pieces together, and then you build this motor, and they launch it, and you see it go up, and it comes back down, and there's just this moment of a hesitation before the nose cone comes off and it deploys. And but there's nothing like that. I had gotten an airbrush for Christmas, and so I thought, well, we'll use it on the rocket, and the only one I found that I liked were roses or flowers. So I guess that's where the yellow rose came from, because I was going to practice with the stenciling. This was my level 2 rocket, and it started out life real short. And when you're trying to figure out your CP and your CG, anyway, in order to get that proportion right, we kept getting longer and longer and longer. So even though it started out as a 4-foot rocket, it's ended up over 6 foot. And it still wasn't heavy enough, so we had to put some extra weight in the nose cone, and it has threaded rod all the way up to the tip. And so that increased its weight, and it flew really good. It's a little touch and go. We did this back in April in Kansas at Cloudbusters in Argonia, and it was a little bit of a heart stopper. It deployed at apogee just like it was supposed to, but the chute didn't come out immediately. I felt like it was because the nose cone was heavy enough that it went ahead and pulled the chute out, and it came back just pretty as you pleased and laid out in the field, just ready to be picked up. It was really neat, so that was exciting. A lot of people like different altitudes and whatnot. I like mine low and slow and where I can see them go up and over, none of this mile high stuff. But a lot of people like them to go, we have waivers to 21 1,000 AGL, which is approximately not quite 4 miles high. And the people who do that, a lot of them have trackers on them, but they also have things that are sonic beacons or buzzers or just noise makers. So when they do come down and they're on the ground, then you go out and you can either have like ultra sensitive microphone to listen for, or when you get close enough to them, you can hear them. There's either like a large pitch squeal or the beacon, or you just hear a buzzing, or just they make some sort of noise so that you know, hey, my rocket's over here to the left, and that you actually have some way, it calls to you, it says, come get me. Even if your weather is horrible, there's one thing is almost as good as launching rockets, and that's talking rockets. And that's what we sit around and do and visit, because rocket people are good people, and if you're a rocket person, you're family. And it doesn't matter where you go or who you are or what you do, you're just always accepted. It's just a feeling of accomplishment. A lot of time when you're doing your rocket, you're not competing with anybody. You're just accomplishing, you're just doing things, and it's just your own feeling of accomplishment that you've been able to do it. And I guess that's what I was talking about, the hook. You've built it, it works. It doesn't matter if it's not the biggest motor. It doesn't matter if it's not the prettiest rocket. It's something that you have done, that you have accomplished, and that it's just a really good feeling inside that, hey, I did this. And, you know, and there's nothing like that. And in this world where we have so much competition, and competition's not bad because we have those too. We have drag races to see which one gets off the pad the fastest. We have altitude records. You have that aspect of it, but you also have your own personal feeling of accomplishment that doesn't have to come from anybody else, but from what you get from it.
A lot of clubs separate duties of president and prefect. This particular club is a newer club. We've got about 30 members. I serve in both capacities as president and prefect. I file the waivers. Our waivers are 25,000 MSL, which in this location is 21.5 AGL that we can get our rockets up to. I'm also the range safety officer. A lot of the prefects that may be listening to this understand all that. It's our responsibility to make sure that certain rules and regulations as far as safety code and whatnot is adhered to. We're also bound by the FAA not to break our waivers. As I mentioned earlier, our waivers are 21,500. So we have to make darn sure whenever we're RSOing as a range safety officer or a rocket, we make sure that's not going to bust the waivers. We have several tools at our disposal to do that. Computer simulation programs and stuff like that. But basically, my job is to make sure the range is run in a safe manner, to make sure that we comply with all rules and regulations of Tripoli, and that also that we comply with FAA FAR 101, which is the FAA's regulations that govern this sport. And primarily, that's just to make sure that we don't get our rockets up too high. Air traffic control from either Fort Worth, Albuquerque, or Amarillo can call me at any time and shut down our operations. That's never happened. We did have a hold one time when they had a military maneuver with some Army helicopters that came over. But we're kind of at the whim of the FAA. If they decide to shut us down, they can. We also don't fly if the wind gets over 20 miles an hour. So I'll be monitoring that all day today because it's kicking up now. It's about 12 miles an hour. But if it kicks up consistently over 20, I will have to shut the range down. Actually, a rocket is unsafe to fly at higher winds. Before a rocket gets up to speed, in other words, if the rocket is not accelerating fast enough for the fins to offer guidance, it can weathercock, which means it'll actually cock into the wind. Well, we have a crowd from the south here. We have our rockets on the north side. The rocket takes up and it's 20 miles an hour. It could weathercock too badly and actually go into the crowd. So yeah, that's something we watch all the time. This range is set up actually for several different types of pads for several different levels of rocket power. This is our low power. We can launch anything up to G here. This rail right here can handle up to 6 rockets. We actually can handle a lot more than that if we had a need to. Whenever we want to go ahead and launch a rocket, we go ahead and flip this switch. Say we had a rocket on pad 1, we flip that switch and announce the flight, push the button after a 3 count on the low power stuff. Over here, our high power rocket launch,
We actually have 3 banks. As you can see here, Bank 1, Bank 2, and Bank 3. Most Tripoli prefectures that have launch control equipment, actually we have a safety tone when we go ahead and arm the system that shows it is armed. We have to flip at least 2 switches in our particular case to arm our system. That way we make sure that nobody comes by and accidentally hits the launch control button. In this particular case, actually 4 switches have to be armed before we can go ahead and set this off. The design of these things is almost for electronics experts. I didn't design this system. I understand the concept on it. We did build the away cell pads and control systems, and basically it involves several switches and relays. We dump a battery charge. We'll have a 12-volt battery here at this system, and then out on the fire pads we'll have, or the other pads, we'll have another battery system that we'll go ahead and dump the relays, and then go ahead and send current down through our igniter leads. Go ahead and fire off our igniters. We have 2 pads, 2 bank layouts set out in front, and the first bank is 250 foot, and we can launch anything up to a K motor out there. We usually launch our I's, J's, K's out there. And then the second bank is our M power pads. That's 500 feet away. And we can launch anything out there M down. So we usually launch our M's, L's, complex K's, stuff like that. We have cluster rockets. Then we have our away cell, which is way out there. That's bank 3. That's 2,000 feet. And we're going to launch an N motor powered rocket today, but I think the wind's going to be a little bit too high, so we probably won't get around to do that today. But we can go ahead and have as many as 24 pads on our high power launch control system. Where we accomplish our safety is by distance. Pot Rocks stands for Panhandle of Texas Rocketry Society. I got Quentin involved in the deal, and you'll see the logo we have here basically. That kind of resembles a De Laval nozzle that Quentin was working on back in the 50s when the Rocket Boys were building their rocket motors. And Kai Michelson came up with this kit, and Quentin wanted to certify with it at LDRS at Cloudbusters. So we built that rocket, he flew it, and he did both his level 1 and level 2 later on. And so we decided to go ahead and design our club logo around Quentin Wilson's rocket, since he was an integral part of the club. I started Pot Rocks mainly because I thought it would be easier to have my own club, have our own club here in this area instead of driving all the way to Kansas to fly. And they kind of encouraged me, and I asked the prefect over there at the time, John Baumtalk, what he thought, and he said I thought I'd probably go for it. So I found 2 other guys that were actually flying rockets in the Amarillo area, and between the 3 of us, we started Pot Rocks. It takes 3 actually to start a profession. And so we incorporated and got that going, and we've kept on growing now. We're about 30 members, but it's pretty neat. We all enjoy it. You know, the thing about it is when you have more and more people, you can draw off of them too as far as their experiences. You learn from them, see, and they learn from your mistakes. To start a club, you have to have 3 members, 3 flyers. 1 member of the club who's going to be the prefect has to be at least a level 2 for 1 year. Level 2 is the second level of the requirements you need to make as you go from level 1 to level 3. Once you get that member, then you go ahead and you don't necessarily have to incorporate the club, but we did that for liability purposes. NAR, which is National Association of Rocketry, and Tripoli both have these different levels of certification for flying rocket motors. Level 1 basically requires a person to build a rocket and fly it successfully without damage. And after he does that, he can fly H's and I's. The second level requires a written test, both safety and technical. Once they pass that test, then they go ahead and successfully fly and safely recover a rocket. Level 3 is a little more involved than that. Level 3 involves the design of a rocket. You get with 2 technical advisory panel members, TAP members with Tripoli, and they sign off on your paperwork, and you build and design the rocket along with your information packet. And then once you successfully fly that rocket and recover it, and get your signatures, then you're good for go to fly just about anything the industry offers as far as commercial.
I thought that they did a pretty fair job on the movie. It's didn't stray radically far from the truth, and was an effective, was basically an effective translation of the book. The movie had a great emotional effect on me. It was very stirring. We were a bunch of teenage boys with no training whatsoever in much of anything, and we kind of had to invent and create everything that we did from scratch. Well, these days you can buy your motors, you can buy your fuel premix, you can buy components like body tubes. I mean, that's what those vendors down through there are selling. But none of that was for sale when we were doing our work. We just had to figure it out our way and do it our way, and it was a pretty good way, but it wasn't as safe as this. What we did was far too dangerous. Wouldn't go near that stuff these days. Just observation and trial and error. We were truly scientists in the sense that we didn't know how, we had to figure out how. Some of the technology that we deal with is fairly sophisticated. It's not something that if you wanted to participate that you would have to spend thousands. You could spend a few hundred a year and have a pretty good time. I don't spend huge amounts myself, but I can tell you this much, these rockets run anywhere from $50,000 to $5,000 or more to build. I can push 15,000 foot with this on a full K. G10 fiberglass, precision ground fiberglass tubing, 2 1/4 inches in diameter. Takes a 58 millimeter motor, but I use the slimline fitting so that you could step down to a 38 and even a 29. That's a one-piece molding, and it's just glued onto the fiberglass. In high school, the one we used was made out of stainless steel tubing, seamless stainless steel tubing, and everything in it was either steel or stainless steel. These things have to be set up with the government ahead of time, you understand. You got to get the FAA approval on your launch site and your waivers to go out and fly. Anything over a pound that goes over 1,000 or 2 feet, you've got to have federal approval to fly. Well, I think it's very important that they pursue their instinct to fly rockets within the confines of an organized rocket club. And it's very important that young people, children, have supervision in their efforts.
Well, if you say interested in rocketry, 52 years and whatever, as a hobby, about 6 years. Found out about it purely by accident, I think as most of these guys did. We're all familiar with the hobby store Rocketry as kids. And the way I got into it was somebody bought my second eldest, who's now a college senior, a little model rocket kit, kind of stuff you buy down at Target and Kmart. And we had a blast with that, and I was in the hobby shop picking up more motors, and I found what was literally the next size up, still only about yay big. And it just grew from there. I was in the hobby store again picking up the next batch of motors for that, and found a magazine called High Power Rocketry. And on the front there was a beast like this standing up with a couple of guys standing beside it. I can do that. That's my kind of fun. Because I think there's a lot of wannabe astronauts in this group. They probably won't admit it as readily as I do. When you look at something like the space shuttle, I forget how many million pieces there are in one of those machines. It's probably the most complex pieces of equipment that mankind's ever developed. These are by no stretch of the imagination anywhere near as complicated as that, but there's still 1,001 things can go wrong. And the trick is to try and get all those 1,001 things to go right. This one up to now hasn't failed me. Let's hope I don't demonstrate one of the failure modes this afternoon. This is my level 2 certification rocket. In fact, it still uses parts of the original level 2 machine. We had less than nominal recovery on one of the launches. It's actually got about 30 or 40 launches on it now. It's been a good vehicle. That's a level 2 certification rocket. The one behind it was named for my buddy Quint there. It's October Sky, after the movie of the same name. That's actually, although it's not much bigger than the Level 2 rocket, that is a Level 3 machine. It takes a 3-inch diameter motor and is good for somewhere between 20 and 25,000 feet when we get it fully loaded. That one's yet to fly. It's an all fiberglass. And then the big beastie behind it is my baby. That's Spirit in the Sky 3. It's flown just once before. It's my Level 3 certification rocket, which I flew down in McGregor, Texas about this time last year. And it doesn't fly very high on the current motor load. It's got what's called an M1315, and that's an M-class motor. It puts out about 450 pounds of thrust, runs for about 6 or 7 seconds, and it'll be good for somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000 feet. But it is capable of taking bigger loads than that. It actually has what they call a clustered booster on it. It has a central 4-inch motor and 4 outboard 54mm motors. So if we ever get that thing full, it should be good for probably close to 10,000 feet. But, my wife and my bank manager are trying to hold me back a little bit. I actually got this turned down to a 3-inch motor, which is the M1315. And then these are the blank outboard tubes for the 4 54mm motors. The motor that's in there now comes up to about this point. The booster section actually finishes around here. There's a coupler that finishes at the end of the booster stage. And in this second piece of airframe tubing, this is where the main parachute is stored. It's a 16-foot diameter single chute. And in this section here is what we call the avionics space. This is where we have our altimeters. And there's actually 2 in here, one main and then a backup for it. When you get into the large rockets, you have to have some duplicate equipment in there to make sure we have something can fail and still recover it correctly. In this one, there are two ALTACs, Black Sky Research. And then in the nose cone part of it, this is where we store the drogue chute. There's actually a separate chute in here. It's about 8-foot diameter that recovers the nose cone. What happens is the electronics in here, after the initial boost, the altimeters sense the initial liftoff, and they're also measuring altitude, but they're also measuring barometric pressure. What it does is at apogee, it'll fire off the drogue chute, so it'll pop off the nose cone and bring out the 8-foot diameter chute. And then as it drops, it's measuring the barometric pressure, and when it senses that it's at about 500 feet, it pops out the main chute. And the whole purpose of that is to keep it close to the pad so we don't end up walking about 10 miles to recover it. Because with a 16-foot chute on there, it's going to go quite a way, especially in this wind. And the bigger problem for high-power Rocketeers right now is bureaucratic restrictions rather than it is the mechanics of getting rockets to high altitude. With the Armadillo Aerospace group that I'm working with, we're using hydrogen peroxide motors there. This is a solid-fueled rocket motor. Join one of the local clubs, and if you're starting out, I would probably even recommend, even though I'm a member of AAA, I would probably recommend that you join the National Association of Rocketry. There are more of those clubs around in the U.S. They have a well-developed safety program, and they have a well-developed education program. And they'll lead you into the basics of rocketry. You can learn the same principles that we apply on high-power rocketry with the model rockets, and you need to get that under your belt before you make the next step. And if you are interested in going that extra step, because AAA is the one that's more focused on high power, and as of to date, it's the only one that's focused on experimental rocketry. Experimental meaning that there is something on board the rocket, be it electronics or the motor, that is not of commercial design.
Well, that's the end of A Beginner's Guide to American Amateur High-Powered Rocketry. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a great time putting it together for you. I really want to thank the folks who took the time to do the interviews with me, and especially I want to thank Frank Cox and his family for their help on this project. Well, now before we go, I've got one more little music video for you. I call it Mission Accomplished.